Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to our Innovia webinar today. We're excited to have Chris from Continia joining us. His session today is called Accelerate Your Finance Processes with Accounts Payable Automation. But before I pass it over to Chris, I'd like to remind you that this session is being recorded and will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share with anyone after the event. We'll also share with you the link to that after the presentation. If you have any questions along the way, we do have a questions box on the screen. Feel free to enter your questions there, as Chris will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So now, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Chris from Continia to kick off our presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Keith, and thanks everybody for joining in this Innovia Continia collaboration webinar today. As mentioned, we'll talk all about accounts payable automation and how that can really accelerate some of your finance processes. I'll give you a little background about Continia, the company, and some of the other products we have as well, but then we'll do a demo real live of our AP automation product. So Continia is originally a Danish company. You may know that the original Navision Nav, what is now called Business Central, came from Denmark as well before Microsoft bought it. And we've been active in this space since 1992, and it's the only ERP family we support. So all our customers, all our products are built for and inside of Nav and Business Central. I will say Business Central, or try to say Business Central throughout this webinar, since that is kind of like nowadays technology. But rest assured, we also support all the versions of Nav. So if you, the feature set and everything is the same. We have over 7,000 clients and well over 18,000 implementations, and that is because we have more than one product. We in fact have 3 available here in North America. We, as Continia North America, support our partners in this market. Innovia is very well equipped to support you with these products. They have a team that is specialized in the implementation and installation of our products. But the 3 products we have available in this market, the focus of today is document capture. These are some keywords around that. We also have an expense management tool and a document output tool, which all 3 I will briefly address. So document capture is used by the far majority of our clients for accounts payable automation. We OCR incoming invoices. We create an electronic version of that invoice in Business Central, and we can match that to a purchase order. We can route it through an approval process. And of course, all of this information gets stored and archived directly in Business Central as well. So for future auditing purposes, it will always be very easy to pull up any of that information right there from Business Central. The approval process we will address today as well. Again, it's either matching to a PO or we can route it through a separate approval process. And we have an additional product called our web approval portal that allows for people that are not working on a daily basis in Business Central to participate in the approval process. They will get emails and links to documents that they can visit from any device that they use. I cannot emphasize enough that we are built inside of Business Central. So our entire product, all the setup, all the data, everything lives in Business Central. And you'll see that in the demo today as well. The interface will look exactly the same for you. We've enhanced a lot of functionality, of course, but you can keep doing the things you're doing today. We're just accelerating these AP processes for you. We can also hook into any additional customizations or fields or dimensions you're working with. So if you are heavily invested in the purchase order process, or you work with the jobs and the tasks modules from Business Central, we can hook into that. If you want to track expenses on a very detailed dimension level, whatever dimensions you're using in Business Central, we can very easily work with that because we live inside of Business Central. For expense management, again, maybe this is a topic of a later webinar with Innovia. This is more handling employee expenses. We have an app available for expense users so that they can take photos of receipts on their phone. We tremendously improve the time that finance needs handling expenses. We have a corporate credit card integration with MasterCard, Visa, and American Express directly. So we pull in transactions as they're being posted by the credit card company into Business Central, and we route that automatically to the expense user to attach a receipt. No data entry is needed. All that information is pulled from the transaction itself. Once the expense user attaches a receipt, it goes automatically through an approval process. It could use that same web approval portal that I was referencing earlier for document capture. And then it will come back into Business Central with all the information as a complete package for finance to do a final check on and post it. That will automatically reconcile the corporate credit card and or schedule payments for reimbursement if people use their own personal credit cards or cash, for example. Similar philosophy, completely built inside of Business Central. So anything custom you've done there, anything in terms of jobs and tasks or billable expenses you need to capture as part of this process, you can give that task to the expense user, the approval user, or the finance user. So you can really involve everybody in coding these expenses correctly. Document output is a product that's more meant for distributing documents out of Business Central and Nav. So think about payment remittance, customer statements, order confirmations. A very easy way to automate a lot of these things based on events happening in Business Central. We have over 25 templates out of the box, and you can customize those. You can edit the templates by just using your Outlook. And it will pull in the data from Business Central to build the email, all the variables. It will generate the attachments that are required. So it can pull together PDFs and merge them also into one big one if a customer just wants one PDF with all open invoices, for example. So very flexible for outbound documentation out of Business Central. And document output and document capture together as products are very often seen as a more complete document management suite. So certainly of interest to many of our customers as well. So here are a couple of our customers. We have, like I said, over 7,000, and we're growing very fast here in North America as well. Well over 200 are now in North America, and yeah, this is going very fast as we speak. If you have a certain interest, we can always look with Innovia to see if we can introduce you to some existing customers that we have together to share some experiences, of course. So with that, let's go to the demo environment. I will do the demo in Business Central, so hopefully you recognize some of the screens, right? But this will work in Nav in a pretty similar fashion, also the Roll Taylor client. How do documents come into Business Central? Well, ideally they come in via email. Your vendors can send them in directly. We'll set up a unique email address using the domain of your company. So it looks for vendors as if they're just emailing the accounts payable team. That email box is being monitored. Anything with a PDF attachment will be automatically picked up for OCR, object character recognition, for those unfamiliar with that term. So we pull all the data from the document. That is the first step that we do. If you still receive documents via snail mail or faxes, for example, we can also process those documents. Most scanners nowadays allow you to email directly. So you can just put all those documents together on your scanner and email them into that same email address. And it can be a single PDF with, say, 100 invoices. Because we OCR the document first and then bring it into Business Central, we can compare it with the vendor information that's in Business Central. And that is the beauty of our application living directly in Business Central. We can compare the data that we find on the document with the vendor information that is in Business Central and decide, hey, this is 4 pages of an invoice of vendor A, and the next one is a 1-page invoice of vendor B, because we can compare the information that we find on the document. So that splitting happens automatically for you. So documents come in, the first step is OCR. That happens in the cloud, and in some cases that can happen on-premise as well if you prefer so. And once that is done, all the raw data goes to the ready to import queue. That import runs on a job queue in Business Central for those familiar with that term. So periodically, typically every hour, you can do it more often also or less often, and you can always click import files as well, and then it will pull in the latest version of all the data. And then it goes to the ready to register queue, where we will be working on mostly during this demo. I would like to point out that we have 4 document categories available in this demo environment: contact documents, GL documents, purchase documents, where we'll start, and we can also allow for sales orders to be created in Business Central. So if you have customers sending you their orders, their purchase orders, we can also OCR those and create a sales order based off the information we find on the document. So as soon as we can find the customer name, an item number, and a quantity, we can create a sales order and fill in all the blanks with the information directly here in Business Central. But let's take a look at the journal for the purchase documents. You can see here on the right-hand side the actual invoice that came in. We see a list of the invoices, and the one that's selected is shown here on the screen. We have the header information that was captured from the document and any comments if applicable. You can already see that the validations that we do, we check with the vendor card in Business Central whether the payment terms that we find on the document are in line. In this case, it's a warning. I can decide to ignore that. You could also set it up that it would actually give an error, and somebody in finance will need to take a look at it. So the idea is that you automate as much as possible. Everything that's within the norm will just process in the background, and finance doesn't have to spend time on it. Only those that cause an exception, something is off, amounts do not add up, for example, automatically somebody in finance will be flagged, and they can take a look at the document and decide how they want to route it next. If we look here, we see the first 4 documents are marked as okay. That means that these documents are basically done. They have all the information has been captured. We were able to apply a template to it. So that information is now available to create a purchase invoice. Normally that would happen in the background, but it is kind of difficult to demo a fully automated system. So therefore I show you kind of semi-automated. These would normally process in the background, but right now I need to click process register to create the purchase invoice, and it will pop up on my screen here in a second. Oh, it takes a little bit of time the first time around. You can see the purchase invoice, the original file is attached, and that link will stay with the document and the transaction forever. You can see the actual document here on the right side as well, and I will manually send it out for approval right now, something that would normally also happen automatically in the background. You can see that it's now pending approval, and approval by Richard Lund, because his name was mentioned on the document, so we use that as the purchaser code. If we take a look in more detail in some of the other Lewis Home Furniture invoices that we got in here, you can kind of see that if I click on a field, it will highlight on the right-hand side where it captured that information. So the system was able to apply a template and know with great certainty that all the information was correctly captured. We validate that information, and all this, the setup, the default setup for this vendor is to book this $7,500 to this particular GL account. That will default in, but of course you could change that. With the right permissions, a finance user can change anything right here. If I would like to teach the system a new trick, for example, I wanted to recognize the posting description, I simply click in the field where I want that data to end up, and I drag and drop a box right here to tell it where it can find that information. And you can see it entered that. We've already captured that data as part of the OCR. but now we taught the system where to put that information. So in the future, when new invoices from Lewis Home Furniture come in, it will automatically be on the lookout for that posting description as well. And that's as simple as it is. I don't have to type anything to handle these invoices. So let's process this one as well and send it out for approval. So we have some invoices to work with later on as part of the approval process. I want to point out that the approval limit in this demo environment is set to $5,000 for Richard. So automatically, because this amount is higher, it added Annette Hill, which is the user I'm logged in with here in Business Central, as a second level of approval to that as well. Let's skip to Coldwell Technologies. This one is interesting because it is matching to a purchase order. You can see it has been fully matched automatically. If we look here, you can see that it pulled PO number 1003. And if we look up in Business Central, we see all the purchase orders that we have from this vendor, but it was able to find the particular one, and it was 100% match. That is in this case based on the total amount. But we could also teach it to recognize the line, something that makes Continia quite unique. Not many solutions can do this very specific line detail capturing. How do all these setups work, right? Where do I determine how I want to treat a vendor in a certain way? Well, by default, they inherit their settings from what we call the master template. And then for each vendor, you have a template card where you can do particular changes for that vendor. So if we look here, the first step upon invoice registration is to match to an order and create an invoice. And the second step is to submit it for approval. You may not want to send it to approval if it is matched already with a purchase order that's been approved. So you could decide to just release it or even post it, right? So you control to what extent you would like to automate things for each and every vendor specifically if you want to. Do we need to recognize lines? We don't have to in this case because we match on the total amount, but we can, we certainly can. And if I select that, you'll see that I have additional options for line matching available, where I want to match to the order number, the item number, the quantity, or the unit cost. But more on a header level, where do I want to match to? Do I want to match to a receipt or an order, or for example, to a receipt only for a three-way match? And the beauty of that is that if you have a purchase order for 100 items with a vendor, you get 50 of those delivered, but you get an invoice for 60 items, the system will only generate an invoice for the 50 you actually received. And it will keep an eye out in the background that when the receipt gets updated with the remaining 10, or even more so from the purchase order, it will reprocess the invoice automatically with the additional items that were invoiced. So with this, you are absolutely sure that you only pay invoices for those goods that you've actually received. You can allow for a variance, either an amount or a percentage, and you can also allow for a variance on a line level. So depending on what item or what type of good it is, and maybe it's the freight, right? Maybe you do allow a variance of 10% in the freight, because that is often calculated at the end. So this kind of shows you the flexibility you have. It also allows you to bring in more fields from Business Central. So if you have particular fields, even from other add-ons that you may work with in Business Central that you would like to capture as part of this process, either from the document or from Business Central, or to be entered by your approvers, you just add that information here. You determine whether it's a required field or not. And that can be both in the header and in the line, right? Some vendors send you the PO number in the line. Not a problem. We just recognize that, right? And for those that are a little bit more technical, you can also see how deeply integrated we are in some of the code units we work with. And you can build upon this as well. And the Innovia team can do this also for you, where you can expand and extend the functionality right here in Business Central. So for this particular invoice, let's also register that one. I know that the purchase order has not been approved yet. So we'll actually get that notification here also. The purchase order has not been approved, so it will be sent out for manual approval and not be automatically approved. So it will do that automatically for me. You can see the purchase order right here, and it brought in the details from the purchase order. So if you work with maybe particular variants or job information on the purchase order, all the information flows through to the invoice. So if your approvers need any of that information to handle this document, we can bring it in from the purchase order. We don't necessarily have to capture that in that level of detail from the invoice itself. I was talking about templates before, and will greatly help you create these templates. I often say it's still faster than typing anything yourself. If I click process and recognize fields the first time around on an invoice, Electronics Limited did not have a template, but now we generated one, template number 3. And it took a stab at where it can find what information. And we can see there's an error here. That's because the amounts do not match. So I need to correct this quickly. I empty this field and I drag and drop an orange box around the word text, and a blue one around the zeros. And because it's 0, the field stays empty. But now I correct this template, and it now knows in the future where to find the correct text information for this particular vendor. So that is it. I can specify a GL account to book this $1,443 on, and I would be good to go. Template created, all data captured. But you can see already on the invoice, we may want to capture the line details, right? So in order to show you that more unique feature of Continia, let's go into the document card where we have a little bit of a more detailed view. If I click on number right here and I drag and drop around that for the header, and similarly, I'll do that here. It doesn't have to be super precise. You just want to avoid that you have overlap between boxes and columns. And you only have to do this the first time an invoice comes in, right? So I'm training the template right now. And then in the future, when new invoices come in, it will automatically apply all of this. So when I now click process recognize fields again, you can see why I said that it's faster than typing to create a template. You can see right here that all information is entered, and it did give me some errors right here because the vendor used their item numbers on here. If you're familiar with the cross-reference table in Business Central and you use that, we would automatically translate this. But we don't know what the vendor means with iPad, so we'll need to build that translation here on the fly. It can be a GL, it can be an item, a resource, a fixed asset, or a charge. It's up to you. It can be a mix as well of things, but let me just use some random items right here. So we have some, and you'll see the errors kind of disappear as I go through this. And then once we've done that, you see the errors are gone, and I can click register to process this document, and I will send it out for approval as well. So here's the purchase invoice again with the attachments and everything right there, and I'll send this out for approval. So that's how quickly you would create a template, and from now on, anything from Electronics Limited could be automated, including the line capturing. So I never have to look at that again. And in that scenario where you have more and more vendors set up with templates, you can see how you can grow into the system, right? Let's focus on the ones that send you a lot of documents or the more complex ones in the beginning, and then slowly but surely you can grow into the system. And once you have these templates created, as a finance user, you have full access to the data because it lives directly in Business Central. You can see what the status is. If the CFO needs to get an overview of all invoices that are due this month, you have access to that information. You can export it to Excel. You can create a Power BI report. You have a drag and drop box right here available as well. And all data is here, due dates, everything is there. So I can see what's going on, but all of these are pending approval. So I will just sit back and wait till we get the approval coming in. And approval users will get a daily email with all documents that require their attention. I can also prompt them to send another one directly here from Business Central if it's the end of the month, for example, and I need their approvals in. And in that email that they receive, there's a link to the web approval portal. That web approval portal works in any browser. If they click on the link from their phone, it loads a mobile-friendly version of the web approval portal, and it can use their Microsoft account for single sign-on. So they only they don't need to remember any additional passwords or accounts or anything. It's a single sign-on from Microsoft available for that right here on the portal. They don't have to use the web approval portal for approvals. If you have your approvers working in Business Central or Nav already, they can of course do it right there. And in fact, you'll see that the second level of approval, the person, Annette Hill, will do approvals directly in Business Central. So that's how it would work if somebody doesn't want to use the web approval portal or you don't need it. But it's a nice feature to involve people that are normally not working in the ERP platform to get their input on an invoice. They can click on a document and they can kind of get a similar view to what you saw earlier directly in Business Central. So it will pull up the actual invoice and any additional line details that may be applicable. So here you see an overview of that. They can see the details, they can add comments, they can attach additional files that will live with the transaction in the future as well, maybe some separate approval documents, for example. And they can kind of go through these lines. They can add a project code, for example. If this was the Mercedes project, I can just add that right there. I can also, if I have the permission, change the item. I can change the description. I can change the pricing if it in the end all adds up. It's important, of course, that it adds up. If something beyond that is needed, you'll have to do that directly in Business Central. I can approve a document. I can reject a document. I can also forward them. If I click forward, I need to select another approver and I can approve it myself and forward it on. I can forward it without my approval, or I can forward it first and then have it returned to me for approval. And any comment that can be added there as well. So if this looks good, I can simply hit approve and then it jumps to the next one. But maybe I want to change the GL account, right? You can give an approver the permission to update any of this information. So right here, I could change the GL account, but I only have access to a limited subset of these GLs. So you can still control to what extent people have access to that data. But maybe I want to use a distribution template, right? Maybe this was not just office supplies. I want to split this out. So you may be familiar with distribution templates in Business Central. We have one that's called office costs that will split this amount out according to certain percentages that are stored on that template. And when I do so, you'll see it creates 3 different lines out of the total of $7,500. I can do that manually as well. I can just add more lines here. But if I have a template, it's a little bit easier. And I can say, you know what, this was not office supplies. This was repairs and maintenance, for example. And this one was electricity and heating. So your approvers can really help you coding this correctly, as they typically know a little bit better what the charges were for. And very often finance needs to chase people down for this input. Now they can provide that input directly themselves. What is good to note is that these approvers will need a limited or team member license for Nav or Business Central. So they don't need to be a full user, but they will need some form of licensing to be able to use the web approval portal. If I hit approve on this one, and then here we go. This is the one with the PO. Looks good. Let's just move on. And similar for this one. While we're here, I also want to point out that if somebody is out of the office, they can also assign their approvals to be handled by someone else. So they can set a from and to date and let somebody else approve on their behalf while they're out of the office. So with that, going back to Business Central, if I refresh the Role Center, you'll see 2 are actually released. Those were within the approval limits of Richard Blum, and 2 still require additional approval. And this is how approval looks like from within Business Central. So we see the same transactions. We have that drag and drop box here where we can also attach additional files to live with the transaction. And if I click on the transaction itself, I get the more detail, right? So here, in fact, you see the one that Richard split out. If I'm happy with that and it looks good, I can simply hit approve right here, and it opens up the next one automatically for me. Similarly, looks good, let's approve it, and that is it. If we now go right here, we have 4 released purchase invoices. They're all marked as green. So this is the stage before posting, and Business Central would just see this as any other invoice that you would normally create, maybe manually. And from here, your setup for Business Central or NAV will take over again. So it will hook into whatever you do for payment of your vendors. If it goes for a check run or in an export file to your bank, for example, it is treated as any other invoice, but you have all the additional information with it, right? Including an approval log, for example, where you can see, hey, this one was approved by Richard, and this one was approved by both Annette and Richard. And that is information that lives with the transaction forever. So if you in the future get audited, you can pull that information up based on anything, right? Based on the particular line in the journal, but also based on the vendor, based on the approver. This data lives in Business Central, so anything can be searched on or navigated against. That will bring me to document search. We bring a very extensive document search into Business Central because we search against everything that's been OCR'd. So not only terminology and words you used on the actual invoice, but anything that's on the document that you initially received. So if I click on document search and I search for the word iPad that we saw earlier on an invoice, you can see we have 2 open documents from Electronics Limited where that word is on. So we haven't done anything with it yet, but we also have one that actually resulted in invoice 1004. So I can just show the document card and it will pull up the invoice with the word iPad on there with just a simple search. That's all I need to do. I can also open the original file, and if the invoice came in via email, the vendor sent me the email, I can also open the email, so I can always look back at, hey, who sent me actually that invoice? Who was it at the company that sent me that? So that is an also not to be underestimated feature that we bring into Business Central when we get to it. But from the screen, you can do a batch post, and standard Business Central and NAV will take over again. And that was really, in a nutshell, what I wanted to show you today in terms of document capture, AP automation, and how we can simplify your lives and accelerate your finance processes. And with that, Keith, I would like to open it up to questions. I don't know if you got any in the meantime.
Thanks, Chris. So as we're going through, I do have a few questions, but if you have any more as we go along, feel free to put those into the question box and we'll make sure to answer those as well. So the first question we have is, do you support all versions of NAV and Business Central?
Yeah. We go back, we have, in fact, existing customers still on 3.7. And what is quite unique is that we also make new versions of our product backwards compatible with older versions. So if somebody is still on NAV 2017, they can benefit from the latest and the greatest version of our Continia products because we make them backwards compatible with older versions of the ERP as well.
Sounds great. Another question is, can you support other document types? What all can you support?
Yeah, well, on the beginning, I slightly addressed it that we have these standard. Sales orders is also used a lot, but we can expand upon this. So with the Innovia team, we can create new document categories, say, for example, receipts. So if you have people in the warehouse receiving packing slips with deliveries of goods, we could also have them email those in and then pull the data from the receipt and update the purchase order from that vendor with those items that you've received from the packing slip. So certainly it's a very extendable system, and we can create more document categories as long as we can attach it simply to a transaction or a record, right? These contact documents we simply attach to a contact, but it can go much further. Receipts, import-export certificates, anything really.
Sounds great. And I did notice that most of the people on our call do work with Innovia already. So can the Innovia team implement this product?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, they've done so recently for a number of customers and with great success. So yes, the Innovia team has been trained by our specialists, and they've been doing a very good job in implementing this product. So your customers can work with yeah, the team that they know and trust for anything BC or NAV related.
That's great. I think that is all the questions we have for today. So thank you very much, Chris, for presenting today. Um, and yeah, do you have anything you'd like to say in closing, or?
No, any further questions or yeah, feel free to reach out, of course, to your Innovia contact person. I'm also happy that you reach out to me and we can work together on some of this stuff. We're excited that you joined us today, and I hope we were able to show you how we can accelerate your finance processes, and yeah, any pricing information depending on if you're a NAV or Business Central or Business Central Cloud. We can follow up and give you a very detailed overview, but you will not be disappointed in how affordable this is. It is a very quick return on investment.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Chris. And if you're joining us live or on demand, we thank you for joining us as well here at the Novia. We have several other webinars coming soon that you won't want to miss. I just want to highlight them real fast. So tomorrow, February 25th, our partner Data Haven will be joining us for their presentation, Redefine Your AP Experience with Data Haven 365. That's at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. And then next week on Wednesday, March the 3rd, at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, Gino Pack from our team here at Novia Consulting will be sharing his presentation, Migrating to BC Nav on Premises to an Azure Environment, Best Practices. So this is perfect if you're considering a move to the cloud and aren't quite sure where to begin. You can also check out our website anytime to see all of our upcoming events. That's anovia.com/events. One of those things coming up that I wanted to highlight real quick is DynamicsCon. So that's an upcoming free virtual event that's going to take place March 16th through the 18th. It'll be full of high quality community selected training for Business Central and the Power Platform. They actually had people vote for the sessions that they wanted to see. So Mary Malone from the Innovia Consulting team will be presenting Enhancing ERP Success, a strategic approach to training/engagement. That's on the 16th, March 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to register today at dynamicscon.com. Join this fantastic session that Mary has planned, and stop by the Innovia virtual booth to say hello, as we are holding a virtual scavenger hunt as well that you can participate in. We also want to invite you to listen to the Innovia Conversation podcast if you have not already. Our hosts, Steve and Jeff, bring you the latest information about the BC Nav world and tips and tricks from experts. They do 2 episodes a month, thereabouts, and you can find out all the podcast platforms where they are available on our podcast page at innovia.com/podcasts. Be sure to subscribe today, as we just had a new episode come out yesterday about getting started with Microsoft Azure. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Innovia webinar.